Well, good evening. It's a little cool again out here in this little trailer. I shouldn't wait until midnight to come out and make the video because it is cold out here. I was somewhat at a loss of words today. I just didn't really know what message to bring, and I've been reading and I've been studying, but I just never seemed to really get anything, or I thought that I didn't get anything, but I had went into the book of Mark chapter 10, and it was on the story of where Jesus is requiring for us to examine ourselves. And I happened to read this story. It starts in verse 17 in Mark chapter 10. I'm just going to use my note today. Jesus is visible. If you look at verse 17, and when he was gone forth into the way, see, Jesus was visible to the man. This man seen Jesus. Not only did he see Jesus, but he showed respect to Jesus because he bowed down to Jesus. He knew his name. He must have known a little bit about Jesus to know that he could call him master. At this time, this man here didn't know him as master, but he called him master. He questioned Jesus, and Jesus questioned him. He then begins the message. If you look at verse 19, he talks to him about that you know the commandments. So that means that Jesus thought that he was pretty smart because he knew all of the commandments, or the ones that the Lord had called out. And then he does something. He admits obedience to them commandments. And we find them here in verse number 19. Jesus looks at him. Now he looks at him not with judgment. He looks at him with love. He loves this man. He finds respect in this man. And in verse 21, he told him, one thing thou lackest. If you notice, if you're reading there, then Jesus, beholding him, loved him, and said unto him, one thing thou lackest. Now listen to this. Go thy way, sell whatsoever thou hast, and give to the poor, and thou shalt have treasure in heaven. And come and take up your cross and follow me. Now, Jesus spoke very plain to him. He didn't try to confuse him. He told him what he wanted him to do. First of all, he said, go sell whatever thou hast and give it to the poor. So what he was actually doing was, he told him, he said, I want you to go to sell all you got, get the money, and go give the money to the poor. And thou shalt have treasure in heaven. Now that's the result of what he told him to do. And come, meaning he had to come back to the Lord after he did that, take up the cross and follow me. This verse brought him sadness. he walked away grieved. Now, what I put down here on my note, we don't know anymore about what that man did. We don't know if he was convicted later on, if he came back to the Lord. But the Lord loved him, and the Lord seen that he had believed to the point that he kept all of them commandments from his youth. If you go back and you see where that verse is, it says he observed the commandment. Meaning that he observed the tradition of making sure that he kept all of the commandments. And I can observe a road sign, a speed sign. I can observe a traffic sign. But that doesn't mean that I follow it. It doesn't mean that I'm going to obey it. But it said right back there that he observed the commandment from his youth up. You don't have to be real smart to not kill, not steal, not to commit false witness. All them commandments that he told, he said that he followed him from his youth. And then Jesus said, you likest thou one thing. Let me cut to the chase. We don't know what happened if he came back, if the Spirit of God dealt with him to come back. We don't know. It just says that he walked away grieved. He was sad. Let me ask you a question. What if Jesus spoke to you? Now, this man here went to Jesus. He came to Jesus. He saw Jesus in the way. And he's the one that asked Jesus, what would it take to have eternal life? What if Jesus spoke to you? If you've seen Jesus in the way, and I hope that we all have, that we've seen Jesus in the way. Now, we don't see Jesus like he saw Jesus. But what if Jesus spoke to you? What would he say to you? What would he say? What if Jesus spoke to you? What would he say to you? That's sort of narrowing down the question. I like using questions in my message. I always have. And one of the things that I thought of today as I was doing this message today is how that when you have a little funnel, and I have one outside, and I didn't even think about bringing it in. But when you start pouring in a funnel, all the fluid is at the top. It goes around and around and around and around till it gets to the end of the funnel. And I want to think that the force is greater down at the very end than it is at the very top. The top was more like a pool of the water. And then as it gets down to the end of the shaft, that water's moving pretty good by the weight of the water on the top. What would he say to you? To me, this is what it's doing. It's narrowing down the question. What if Jesus spoke to you? That's one question. What would he say to you? That's another question. What would he say to you? What do you love more? Now, would that be a fair question to ask the people in the nursing home? They don't have a lot of things that they can love. They don't have a lot of treasured possessions when they get to the nursing home. But what do you love more? Well, let me tell you the scenario where I'm going What do you love most? We can all say that we love Jesus, and I heard one woman say, yeah, I love Jesus. But what do we love most? A lot of people are content with religion. Religion is all they know. But the way that you get to know the Lord in truth and in spirit is you know Him in relationship. Relationship. That's what it takes to be listening to the Lord. See, this man here went away sorrowful. He went away grieved. Jesus, here's what He was doing. Jesus was actually doing the man a favor. He was letting the man know that, look, none of these things that you got is going to make you happy. And as soon as you get rid of all them riches and get rid of all that stuff that you own, because he had great possessions, and I think that's what the Bible said right here. Let me turn back just to make sure. But I think it said here that he had great possessions. Yes, verse 22. And he was sad at that saying and went away grieved, for he had great possessions. The possessions that he had him instead of him having the possessions. And what Jesus wanted to do was to get rid of the possessions that he had, because Jesus wanted to give him a greater blessing than what he had in his riches. He wanted that man to know what a real relationship was rather than what religion was. Religion will give you what you want. Relationship will give you what you need. Thank y'all for listening.